Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 73. We're recording it on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 at 8:06 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to start off with, I was intending to have Andy join me again. And this is kind of like instructive in the sense of how God works sometimes. A lot of times, God doesn't have things go the way we want them to go. And then a lot of times we'll get upset and frustrated. Oh, this is terrible and stuff. And that's what was happening. I mean, we weren't getting upset and saying it was terrible, which was good. But what we were trying to do was to get Andy's iPhone to work on Zoom with it turned horizontal so we could see the full picture, and it wasn't working. It's just like, it just, for whatever reason, it was horizontal on his end, but on my end, he was sideways. So we had to go to plan B. And so like, I happened to ask him, do you have a laptop? So basically he said he did. So like now we're in the process, he doesn't ordinarily use it. So like we just gotta, get into his Gmail account so we can get a text message with the link for the Zoom meeting. But the point I'm trying to make is that God, in my experience, probably in yours as well, um, very often doesn't allow something that we expect to work, that we want to work, because God has something better in mind. So think about it, to the extent that we can record these meetings through the laptop instead of the phone, then that's easier. We could be on the phone sometimes if something's not working, like the sound or something. Um, it's a better, it's a much better setup. He can see the screen much better and all the controls. So, God does that. All right. And so like knowing that God does that um, is helpful, because like to the extent you know that, if something's not working out, whatever it is, it could be computers, could be, it doesn't matter what it is, you can ask yourself, all right, now, like, is this something that I need to continue working on to get to work? Because sometimes sometimes there is no plan B. uh, uh, which is, and which, again, that may be in our best interest also, but like sometimes it's important for us, yeah, to fix whatever is not working. But but um, but other times, like it is God leading us to a better circumstance. So all right, so anyways, like where we are now is like he's Andy's going to look for the password and see if he can log into his Gmail on that laptop, and then we're going to like you know hopefully when that happens we'll do an episode soon after that. So, and so I haven't really thought of what to talk about tonight, but I do have I started working on the show topics list. So, and the first topic I come up with is like opening a communication channel through prayer. And actually, let's just talk about that for a minute or so. Um, God communicates with us 24/7. You're watching TV, God is communicating to you. You're taking a walk, you're seeing things, you're hearing things, God is communicating. You're talking with someone, God is communicating with you. There isn't a circumstance we can be in where God isn't communicating to us, either through what's going on in the environment or through our thoughts or both. So, but what happens is like, and again, this is episode number 73. I've found that the more I talk about God like this, and this isn't really praying, but just talking, exploring God, asking questions about God. Why does God do this? Just getting to know, getting to understand God better, seems to, in my life, recently, my life has gotten better. It's like, it's not. Um, I don't think it's coincidental. I think that, to the extent we establish a strong connection to God, that's what happens. And actually, yes, I was meditating recently, and you know how, like, this is interesting because, like, because I'm doing so many episodes, it seems that my ability to distinguish between um, what what we might call like the better angel, or you ever remember, like, in cartoons you had like you had the little devil on the shoulder, little angel on another shoulder, and the devil's telling you no, do something wrong, and then the good angel says no, don't do it, or so, like, this so we have voices within us, and I think what happens is, the closer we get to God, the better we understand God through various means, um, the better we get at discerning, which of these voices is to be trusted. And so, yeah, what's interesting is, like, so I was meditating the other day, and that reality, seemed very clear to me. Because, like, episodes before that, over the last several days, we've been talking about discernment, which is discerning, you know, what's the right thing to do, whether it's right to eat something or not, to go out for a walk or not. And so this is similar. This is like not so much what's the right thing to do, but like, is this, is whatever thought is telling me to do something coming from God, or God's good side, I guess we should say, or part of God that is testing us. That, again, God as a trickster or something is like intentionally trying to deceive us. Um, so yeah, all right. So that's, I think it's important to understand that the better we understand God, I think we can say that our conscience strengthens, our ability to distinguish right from wrong. All right. Now, so I want to get back to this list. Should have been, see, I thought I was going to do the show with Andy, so, like, I figured we'd come up with something on together. But all right, the next topic I have here is, what are angels? This is important. Yeah, this is good. All right. At a certain point, everything's conjectural, and so we have to kind of like start with a working premise. And the working premise we want to start with is, like, for example, the first line of the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So, and it refers to we, not just God. Um, and and so that means that, all right, the heaven and earth were created, and what we're presuming is that the angels were created by God before the world was created, but after God had existed. So, like, and this is going to get a little confusing. So we start with the premise that God is eternal, and that's another premise, because, like, and that you can derive logically. In other words, like, if God created this world, then God is what existed, along with the angels, apparently, before the world was created. But before the angels were created, God existed logically, supposedly, as God. Now, how it gets complicated is because, for example, if God existed eternally, and God is all knowing or omniscient, then, and I think a very strong and real sense, you and I and everyone have always existed in God's mind. We existed our entire life. Every moment of our life existed in that part of God's mind or knowledge that knows everything about the future. So we haven't, eons ago, billions of years ago, we weren't here right now, but in God's mind, we existed completely. And that's kind of surreal. And that to me, that's kind of like, that's a great way to see the afterlife. That now some people say, oh yeah, we exist in our the people who have passed exist in our memories. We keep them alive in our memories. But so that would kind of like suggest that when we die, then the people who have died also die because they're no longer in our memory. So like, so I think this approach of understanding that if God created the universe and therefore is everything, therefore knows everything, that we in some form not only will not only existed, again before we were born here on Earth, but will continue to exist after we die, which is interesting because, like, I mean, this is this is the good thing about this series. It brings up questions that I'm not sure I've ever asked, and so like in other words, like so let's say yes, let's say we birth to death, we exist in God's memory. And so, like, so we're kind of like exploring, well, what's the nature of our existence? If we have one, I believe we do. I think it's wise to believe we do. Since we don't know, it just makes, it makes us feel better to believe not just that we exist, that we'll exist, in bliss, in virtuous bliss. But if we do that, then, the question arises, what? So like, we'll exist um, in that same birth to death form, will exist, in God's mind as a 2-year old and as a 20-year old and as a 40-year old, you know, uh, all at once, because God remembers everything. There's not anything God, doesn't remember. Um, because I mean, like that. I mean, again, we're exploring new territory. So that's one possibility. There is another possibility, I guess, that there's a part of us that we call the soul. And so, yeah, so our body, decomposes, it returns to the earth, but our soul is what, and this, this I'll have to think more about, in terms of the logistics and all. But, but it could be, in other words, like if we don't want to just like exist eternally, somewhere between being born and dying, these 80, 100 years, whatever, then the alternative to that is to have the soul. And Orthodox Jews, I think, believe that we have 3 souls, or we gain an extra soul in on the Sabbath. I'm not sure what Christians and Muslims believe, but there seems to be this you know consensus that we have this soul. And so yeah, so like, all right, so we've got a soul, and here's where it gets conjectural. And I'm not sure if there's a maybe right now there's no way to know. Maybe in the future there will be, because like there's various possibilities of what happens. One possibility, that's very popular in the East is that, well, if we did really well in this life, it's kind of like school. If you're in like the 5th grade, if you pass all your exams and all that stuff, you get promoted to the 6th grade. Whereas if you don't, you get held back and you got to go to summer school or something, whatever. So it could be that if we, let's say, did sufficiently well on the tests that were given, and when we evolve, we become more compassionate and we get closer to God and we have more understanding. Then it could be that when we die, our soul comes back, into another human body, but at a higher level. I mean, if let's say we were a criminal, in the last life, this 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 incarnation we might be a police officer or a judge or a doctor, somebody does a lot of good, who really is, much better. Um, and So if we don't, under the reincarnation model, and you've heard this before, this isn't really so new, then some people believe that, well, I've heard that you either come back as a less fortunate person, or you could come back as an animal, like a dog or a cat, or you could come back as an insect. There's various, like, and they have these degrees of divinity and favor attached to them. You'd prefer not to come back as a grasshopper. If you can come back as like, a very virtuous person, an enlightened person. So, so now I mean, like, what do I choose to believe, just because it's like, because we don't know, I mean, again, we may eventually know, but all right, there are like three or four possibilities of what happens. One is like nothing happens except that our body decomposes and we cease to exist again, except in God's memory. That I think that's got to be a given, whatever. But no, the soul just like doesn't exist anymore because it's just for this body. I don't know. So that's we don't exist. To me, that's kind of like both pessimistic and not very interesting. I mean, if you have a belief because there's really no sufficient evidence to know something, then you've got a choice in a way. It seems wise to believe something that feels better than something else. And now, granted, I mean, and actually, those people who believe that that nothing happens, I think the most genuine, authentic answer to that question is like nobody knows, right? But that's a given. But like so, like some people's again, first, possibility is, well, nothing happens, and they stay with that, and they're fine with that, which is fine, I guess, if it works with them. But there are several other options. One is the modern Christian option. Some people who are good go to heaven, um, abide with God in bliss and virtue and all for all of eternity. All's well. But some people believe that some people, within the course of 80, 100 years, do things that are so bad, or even one thing that's so bad, that they are thrust into eternal, you know, um, hell, suffering, extreme suffering for all of eternity. Now, not only do I believe that's wrong, because that's so antithetical to just like an understanding of God and reality, but it I can't think of a more hateful belief, you know, to believe that someone like again that in 80 or 100 years can do things or one thing, whatever, that's so bad that they actually deserve to suffer for the rest of time. That's beyond horrible. So like yeah, and so like all right, so that's the third option. The fourth option is what I choose to believe in, not because there's substantial, perhaps even any evidence, except maybe that we want to believe that it's the most desirable possibility, which may be evidence for it being this way. And the idea that we all, regardless of how much good or how little good or whatever that we've done on this earth, all go to the best place and eternally. And again, I believe that for a couple of reasons. One is because I can't think of a better belief. Just like I can't think of the belief in hell as a more hateful, evil belief. I think, and that it actually it's not completely evil because in a certain sense people promoted that view because they thought if they scared people they'd be you know more virtuous here in this life. They'd try to avoid this like eternal hell. But but with believing that we all go to heaven, it's like um, yeah, it's not just that it's a very desirable belief compared to any other belief we might have of the afterlife. Um, it it makes sense when you properly understand the nature of God. And we've gone through this before. It's this idea that we don't have a free will, that if God created the world from God, and so that the world is made from God, everything is God. And if everything is God, then God knows everything. And if God knows everything, um, God controls everything. I mean, like, yeah, if God created the world, God created the laws of nature that govern everything, the physics, so this idea is like, in my mind, if God is all powerful, if God is omnipotent, if we don't have a free will, like our top scientific minds say, and like what makes sense, because really, if we had free wills, then who among us wouldn't be perfect angels, perfectly blissed out angels every day? Because again, a free will means that we can think, feel, say, and do as we wish, when we wish, presumably. Otherwise, how free of a will is it that can't do whatever it wants or feel whatever it wants? Doesn't seem like a free will. So, given that, if we don't have a free will, it would be the height of unfairness to have God make us do things that are wrong in this life, and then He does, she does, whatever, and then condemn us to eternal suffering. That's like, um, that would be that. So yeah, because we don't have a free will, and the third component I didn't mention before is that God made us to seek pleasure and avoid pain, to seek happiness and avoid suffering. So, so it would make sense that we're moving in that trajectory, however much we backpedal, make mistakes, go in the wrong direction for a while. Um, all right, so that's we've got about 6.5 minutes left. Um, Now, just one thing before we get on to maybe another topic. We don't know. We're just guessing. And again, like I would advise you to believe that we all go back to God, and it's it's the best existence we can imagine, because that's got to feel good. If you believe that, and you teach your children that, and your friends all believe that, then we're not afraid of dying. Um, and it also, like, it prevents us from condemning others. Sometimes, like, we we condemn people, saying, oh, they're so evil, and naturally, to the extent we understand they don't have free will, it's not that they're evil, it's that God is, for whatever reason, making them do things that are wrong. Again, we don't know why that is, but when it's kind of like magnanimous um, state, or state of judgment, to see those people as, yes, sometimes we have to punish people, and we punish ourselves through guilt sometimes for the wrong we do. But it's a nice feeling that even the worst of people um, can eventually exist, never doing any wrong again, and being completely happy, with everyone else. And another reason, I guess, the more I think about this, the more reasons that come for believing this, is like, I I can't fathom the idea of babies emerging into this world evil. I think our basic nature is goodness, and then through life we learn evil. We learn to steal and lie and do things wrong. Um, but I don't think that's a part of our fundamental nature. It's something we have to learn. So, all right. So enough on God for a while. Let's go back to the topics. All right. I've got a morality pill to strengthen our conscience. Got about 4 minutes. We're not going to be able to cover this much, but yeah, I've said this before. We've been at this religion thing for several thousand years, and yes, this world is so much better now than it's ever been in the history of humankind. But like that line, it was the best of days, it was the worst of days. I think it's Hemingway. I don't know. Even though we humans are living longer, healthier, happier, have many more blessings that human beings have had in any other time, we're like severely abusing animals, and I believe that this pandemic, this threat of climate change, is in part because of that. It seems God rewards and punishes according to what we do. So anyway, my point, and I got just 3 minutes, is that like, yes, we can learn to become more virtuous by talking with God. That's why I'm doing this. By praying, by going to services, by reading Torah if you're Jewish, reading scripture. Um, but again, like, a few thousand years after we started doing that, we're a lot better, but we could be a lot better. So imagine, imagine there's a part of our brain that explains why some people are saints and other people are just fall far short. Because something has to explain, and it's probably, it could be a region of the brain, that's like, if, for example, with empathy, there's a region of the brain that's involved with empathy. Sociopaths, apparently that part of the brain isn't working correctly, or so so the idea is somebody discovers this part of the brain that deals with strength of conscience, that allows us to discern between right and wrong and get it right so much more of the time. So I mean, we'd still probably want to learn about God and go to services and do, because it's good, feels good. But imagine just taking a pill every morning, like a vitamin pill, and you go through that day, and let's say you're driving, you don't cut people off, you're just like, you're not speeding, you're doing things right throughout the day because this pill is strengthening your conscience. So yeah, then it wears off by, I don't know, but I mean, you may have to take it, who knows, eventually maybe they can like have you just like a genetic modification, you just like some procedure that I'm not aware. I don't know how they would do this, but basically, or like a vaccine, you take it once and you're inoculated from evil or something. I don't know, but we might want to consider that. Technology has created this wonderful world that we live in. Computers. You're seeing this through the wonders of computers. So if we apply this technology to our conscience, we might get much better results from ourselves. I'm under a minute, so thanks for watching. Let's see. So catch this series at 5 o'clock every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon, and the episodes are all on YouTube. And hopefully tomorrow's like, I don't think Andy and I are planning to do another episode together for a few days, I believe, at least. So that means that tomorrow I'll be, thinking of what I want to talk about, and hopefully it'll be more interesting. We'll explore other stuff. So, all right, thanks for watching. Again, like to the extent that you talk with God, you get closer to God, and things tend to go better. Thanks. I'll see you again soon, God.